a Playlist original.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster with your host Gaius and Jackson. The final episode of our very limited Merry Bingemas series.
That's right,
but still good.
Oh yeah, an absolute blast, and not a conventional lineup of movies for this holiday season. Which thank you for accommodating my tastes, I gotta say the one that we're ending with was very much up my alley, as we've just been talking about off camera. I am like floored by this movie. I cannot wait to get into it and chat about it. And another first time watch for myself, but one that you've put me on and I've heard you praise for a long time now, and I completely get where you're coming from with Black Christmas.
Yeah, I think I told you before. I can't remember if it was on the show or off, but this was like one a long time ago that, like, if you're like reading about horror movies, they would always talk about this one, and I always had an issue fighting it because for so long there was not a good like edition of it on DVD or anything, and if there was one, it was super expensive. But then I just was like, screw it, I'm gonna buy a really expensive copy of it so I can finally see it. And I was absolutely floored, especially as someone who loves Halloween, and hearing that.
I can see why you love this.
Yeah, and then hearing how it feels like, you know, Halloween was heavily influenced by it, and I guess you can see in certain shots and just the way that it's executed, it really seems like it was
undeniably
influenced by it.
Oh my god,
yeah, and like you said, this was a very unconventional Christmas movie lineup, but I feel like we did good. We had two movies that were kind of traditional, like the Holdovers and Home Alone.
True.
And then we went unconventional with Gremlins and Black Christmas. And we did promise we could fit this one in, that we were going to do it. And I'm glad we were able to fit it in, because this is a solid one, and I'm happy to talk about it with you. We went over Black Christmas as a whole last year. We talked a lot about the remake and the other remake, which is like the first remake is I hated it when I first saw it. I accept it now. I accept it now as like trashy slasher movie fun. It's really.
I watched the trailer a few moments ago, and I mean, it suffers from 2000s trailer syndrome. I did get the sense that I don't know if it would be for me. I'm surprised to hear you say that you can tolerate it.
Yeah, well, I kind of feel like it was the same thing that happened with Halloween, that remake, where I hated it.
Right. Yeah.
And then like certain people will tell me like, dude, like watch it not from the perspective of they're butchering a movie you love, and watch it from the perspective of like it is for what it is, I guess. And over time I have accepted that remake. I don't think it's a good movie by any means.
Right.
But it's fun. The other remake is not even worth mentioning. It's just a remake in name only.
Yeah, so I've been told.
And it's not very good. But this movie is very good. And the fact that it was even able to get 2 remakes shows how much of a cult classic it is. It has become over the years. Because like when it came out, it did really well in Canada, because it's a Canada.
That's right. Film. I was surprised to find that out. Shot in Toronto, set kind of ambiguously, but it's assumed to be Toronto as well.
Yeah, and it's Canadian through and through. From except for star Oliva Hussey, who is not Canadian.
Right,
but and then Margot.
American.
Yeah, and Margot Kidder, who's also who would go on to play Lois Lane in the first Superman movie. But a lot of the cast they hired locally Canadian actors. A lot of the crew also Canadian, and it was successful in Canada. It had a rough time here. They changed the title of it here when it came out in the States. They changed it to Silent Night, Evil Night.
Cringy, and bad.
That's really cheesy.
I get why though. So I guess they were trying to avoid the coincision with like blaxploitation films that were really popular in the 70s, which I can appreciate that sentiment, not wanting to be confused with that, but still, like, holy, that name is nothing compared.
It's a mouthful too. Yeah, and then when it aired on television, they changed it to Stranger in the House, and that got kind of confusing in the States. So it took a while, I guess, for the movie to catch on. And then by '78, Halloween came out. That movie also wasn't initially successful, like right out the gate. It kind of took a little bit to build, but it definitely built way faster than Black Christmas did. And it wasn't until years later that people would talk about Black Christmas, and especially people that love Halloween would see it and they'd be like, oh, like, did he rip this off, or what did he do? Because there is a quote I'll talk about later. Bob Clark and John Carpenter were going to work together at one point. Mm-hmm. And John Carpenter, I guess, casually asked him about if he would ever make a sequel to Black Christmas.
I read this today.
And Bob Clark did tell him what he would do if he made one. I don't want this doesn't take any of the novelty away from Halloween. Halloween's a great movie, and I really don't think John Carpenter ripped him off. A lot of it feels like a lot of those techniques were still very new that Bob Clark used in Black Christmas, and that John Carpenter would also use in Halloween.
But he was clearly inspired, without a doubt.
But he was clearly inspired by a lot of it. But in case some of you don't know, Black Christmas was released in 1974, produced and directed by Bob Clark, and written by A. Roy Moore. It stars Oliva Hussey, Margot Kidder, Keir Dullea, who was in 2001: Space Odyssey.
Yeah, played Dave Coleman. I was very shocked to find that out. I didn't recognize him in the movie, actually.
Andrea Martin, who would go on to become a kind of prolific comedian as well. And if you don't recognize the name, she became famous again after appearing in the My Big Fat Greek Wedding movies later in life. Lynne Griffin and John Saxon playing a cop. He would also play a cop again 10 years later in A Nightmare on Elm Street.
I was wondering where I recognized him from.
The story follows a group of sorority sisters who receive threatening phone calls and are eventually stalked and murdered by a deranged killer during the Christmas season. It's inspired partially by the urban legend, The Babysitter and the Man Upstairs, and apparently a series of murders that took place in the Westmount neighborhood of Montreal, Quebec. Moore wrote the screenplay under the title Stop Me, and the filmmakers made numerous alterations to the script, primarily the shifting to a university setting with young adult characters. Shot in Toronto, as you said, between March and May, so it wasn't even filmed during the holiday season, on a budget of $686,000, and it was distributed by Warner Brothers in North America. Mixed reviews upon its initial release, but it was later reappraised by film historians as being one of the best examples of the earliest slasher film. It is also praised for its influence on John Carpenter's Halloween. Aside from its earning a cult following since its release, a novelization written by Lee Hayes was published in 1976, and it was also followed, like we said, by two remakes released in 2006 and 2019. What are your Cliff Notes thoughts of this after your first viewing?
Well, I should preface by saying I know I mentioned I'd never seen this before. I again, similarly with the last movie we spoke about, which now that I'm saying the sentence, I'm forgetting what our last episode really was.
The Faculty was the one.
Faculty,
we did.
yes, exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I'd said in that episode too, where I didn't really know a lot beforehand. This too, I remember, like, I've browsed it before. I had memories of a child, what I thought was this movie, and it turns out I don't think it was this movie, of another, I think, Christmas related horror movie. I thought maybe it was like another Nightmare Before Christmas, not the animated one or stop motion one. So really, I knew even less about this one than I did. No idea that it was influenced by that infamous urban legend about the man upstairs. I thought that was really cool too. Like, the calls are coming from inside the house. Like, this really popularized that in media too, which was like, didn't expect. I saw that coming by the time I was watching the movie, but didn't realize
right
beforehand that was a trope that was inspired from this movie. But Cliff Notes, back to the point here, like, I was floored while watching this. Super entertaining. Like, really did not expect, honestly, like, I saw that I expected not to like it, but I didn't really think I would like it as much as I did, if that makes sense. Like,
makes sense. The
movie. Didn't think I was going to take away so much that I did. I was like very, very happy by the time this. I mean, it's dark. It is original for the time. You can clearly see how this movie inspired several other really famous horror series. You mentioned already Halloween. I think there's a lot of Scream in here too, particularly with the killer calling and toying with the particularly female victims as well. A lot of like that opening 20 minutes of Scream too feels like it comes from obviously with the 90s take on it. But that was very charming to see. I think I guess this is a fair spoiler warning for people that haven't seen it. I would suggest you go into this, if not have it being spoiled, if you haven't seen it yet, but fair warning. The fact that we don't really see, or there's no information about our killer, I thought was a genius play, and something you just don't hear about in horror movies. Usually they like to flex and show their killer off and have him be the next big franchise killer. But this, I've never heard of Billy before, who I guess presumably is who the killer in Black Christmas is. And I think that it was an excellent choice for this movie, and makes it all the more creepy and realistic that we don't really know who's doing this. Just presumably some deranged person who found his way into the sorority girl's house and is picking them off. There's so much in here I didn't expect, that I was like so pleasantly surprised. Maybe I have like rose-colored glasses on right now, but I give this a 5 out of, I guess I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. This was the perfect horror movie for myself. I really enjoyed it.
Well, I'm glad you liked it, because when I first saw it, I finally got it, and I took it to a friend's house, and this was high school, probably junior year, senior year. I finally got a copy of it.
To watch that.
And I was like, hey, I got this movie. Like, do you want to watch it? And he was always down to watch anything horror related, even though his first thought was like, oh, this is made in 74. It's kind of old. Is it going to feel like dated and not scary? And he had never heard of it. But by the end of it, he was like, we were both kind of terrified. But I mean, there were parts of it that scared us,
right
at that time. Because you're watching for the first time. It's very creepy and unsettling, and
still
it's interesting
in 2023 it is.
And like, it, even though by the time we watched it, all those tropes have been done in other movies, the killer calling from inside the house and the creepy phone calls. That's like, this is 74. When a Stranger Calls does it in 79.
Right.
And the opening 15 minutes of that movie are very well done. The rest of it is not so great, but like it is known for that opening 15 minutes of the babysitter, getting calls from inside the house. And then you mentioned Scream, which Scream does that too. And not just like the killer's watching me, it's close, but also how kind of vulgar the phone calls were. But this felt worse than anything I heard in Scream.
Yeah, I was not expecting the language from this movie, especially for the 70s. Like he's throwing out words you just don't hear in mainstream movies.
Yeah. So the first time I saw it and it got to that first phone call, like I had to question whether or not I was hearing what I was hearing. Like me and my friend were like, whoa, that was a lot.
Yeah,
that was certainly like
that got my interest quick. I was like, okay, this is the tone this movie's going for, and it maintains that throughout too. And I thought that was excellent.
Yeah, I thought so too, and I also love that, like, I think now it's getting the credit for it, but it did a lot. Like Peeping Tom was one of the first movies to do the whole like killer point of view with the camera. But like, but this did it before Halloween, and it does it right away from that in a similar way that Halloween does it. That whole opening of Black Christmas, you just see a figure like going up to the house and then climbing up the trellis and getting inside the house,
breathing into the camera,
the breathing, right? And all you're seeing is the breathing and hands, and that's it. Yeah, and what's crazy is that that he's in there from the jump, but even when you go all the way to the end and you find out that when she finds out that the calls are coming from inside the house, you still feel that shock with her, even though you've been watching this the whole time and know it yourself. But it really, after it was done, after that first viewing, when I saw it many years ago, was that I was like, this really did influence like a movie I loved. And then they also made me question whether or not like how much of it was borrowed from or stole from, however you want to see it. And then I was also kind of annoyed then, not so much anymore. I was like, why isn't this movie getting as much credit as Halloween?
That was my thought too.
It's like crazy. I don't know if it's just like, a lot of people haven't seen it, but like, this movie turns 50 next year. And I think at this point, like more people should be like, hey, like it's okay to give Halloween its flowers. Of course, it's a great horror movie. It's a great movie, but you can also mention another film alongside it that does what that did equally as well. I don't want to say better. There are certain things in Halloween I think that work better.
Yes, the score I'll say in Halloween is definitely something that separates them, and the character of Michael Myers. I'd say without those two things, though, I think I'm skewed. Like this is my most recent watch. I've seen Halloween a million times. But I remember coming off as like, I feel like I'm going to rewatch this sooner than Halloween. You know what I mean? Like, because it's fresh for me. I've never seen it before. But I was clearly comparing them amongst myself. But I think Halloween has the edge with that incredible, infamous face, right, and character with Michael Myers. And Carpenter's score does a lot for that movie, too, that's missing in Black Christmas.
And I think it arguably has they're different. It arguably has a better lead female I think you spend more time with Laurie, but there's stuff about Jess that at the time that this movie came out would be pretty groundbreaking for a woman. Like having a character that is pregnant and then saying that she's telling her boyfriend that she's gonna get an abortion,
telling him, not consulting,
not consulting.
That's borderline radical for 1974.
Yeah, this is what I'm gonna do, and there's no there's nothing he can do to convince her. I think that makes that pretty much ahead of its time. I don't think that definitely wasn't a part of the conversation then, not at least openly.
I include that in my Letterboxd review that this movie is insanely ahead of its time.
Yeah. I guess the only detriment is like she's not totally as fleshed out as I would say Laurie is in Halloween.
That doesn't bother me for Jess. I like that in this movie. Not that I'm saying I don't think it bothers you either, but like comparing that, like I think this works within the confines of this movie. Like we're with these sorority girls for a couple of days, if that, and we get a little bit. Nothing really outside the house is really important, I guess, for this movie. So I get like they're different movies and the leads have different things, and Laurie is a little bit more fleshed out. I guess that leads like to you like more empathizing with her more or whatever the implications that are. I think it completely works for Black Christmas in the sense that like I'm kind of like I'm happy not being burdened with all this information about this character. Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say, I was thinking, I thought about something you said when we were talking about Halloween, where this movie also shares the thing with Halloween where there's no motive really in the original Halloween. There's no motive for what's going on. But then you mentioned in our Halloween episode that it's hard for you to kind of watch Halloween and not think about what the sequel set up, where like, oh, eventually you find out that like it's her brother and there's a reason, right? I think what Black Christmas does better is there is no motive, and I don't need, and there's no real connection at all. You don't really need to know anything. There's no like, oh, I wonder why he's doing this. It's so obviously random that there is no need to like, well, I wonder if they like he knows them for some there, or he'd been watching them. Now there's like so much speculation online about like how he knew the layout of the house and how he was able to like get around so easily in the house. Like there's a lot of Reddit theories about like maybe he grew up there, or like before it was a sorority shop, and all this other stuff. And I think that's overthinking it. I think if you were to, not saying that I know anything about breaking into homes, but if you were to get inside the house, it would be like fairly easy to maneuver your way around it enough to like not get caught. And so I don't think there is a deeper connection to that home.
No, I don't think so either.
The remake tries to do that, and that kind of, the remake is just like heavy-handed. Here's all the reasons why this is happening.
That's so 2000s. You can see how that would be a product of its time for sure, which like all movies are essentially. But
definitely,
yeah.
But I do like how like it starts right away that you already know, like within the first like minute or two, there's a threat, pending threat in the home. Agreed. But then you also kind of forget about it because it's all this like, I love that you're getting set up with all this mundane chatter amongst the girls about Barb talking about wanting to go the ski trip, and then like getting on the phone with their parents, and then that's not going to happen. And then
the holdovers actually.
Oh yeah, exactly right. And then you have like the couple outside, Claire, who is the first to die in the movie, their conversation outside, and just like, it really sets up like, you see that there's this threat that's already entered the house, but it switches so effortlessly back to the kind of normal everyday conversations that these girls are having,
right?
Until you get the first phone call. And I, even watching it last night, that he's in there, but there's something about that first phone call and what you just saw that feels so detached from itself. Like you're like, why is this happening? Where is it coming from?
Right.
Like your brain knows it must be the dude that climbed into the sorority house, but it's like, how is it happening? Where is he, calling? Like, where in the house is he calling from?
How close is he? How is he access the phone? Yeah.
Right. And I still, like, I've seen the movie a handful of times, and all the phone calls are creepy. They get progressively creepier,
unhinged. Yeah.
And you get more details within them, but that first one still sticks with me. The first one and the last one actually are the ones that stick with me the most, because the last one's the longest of them, where it's a lot of going back and forth, where he's clearly imitating several different people. But that first one is just, and I love how it's just the conversation and just him talking, and it's slowly panning around the girls' faces and them like listening to it. And it's kind of like unnerving kind of calmness the way they're listening to it. I was wondering what your thoughts were when you first heard that first call.
I really like that. For whatever reason this was decided, I think it worked for the best, that we're plopped sort of in the middle of this altercation with the killer, I guess is a good way of referring to him, and the girls, because by the time he calls for the first time and interrupts the girls' night, they've already dealt with him before. Like I think it's is it Barb or Jess that answers the phone for the first time? And she goes, it's him again. Yeah, Jess.
It's him again.
The moaner, I think she refers to him as. So we already, like, we're being told, like, okay, he has called this house before and obviously done his thing, but you can tell that it's distressing to them. And obviously Barb has had enough at the time, like during the call, and starts to lip back with them. But I agree, the shot of seeing all their individual reactions to the call as it gets more and more disturbing, it clearly tells us this is more than just a prank or somebody trying to get under the skin. Like, this is somebody deranged. And I think is it Claire that says to Barb, like, I don't think you should provoke somebody like that.
Like that. Yeah.
Sort of kind of like acting as the audience in that sense. Cause like, while we can get behind Barb trying to stick up to him, it honestly kind of feels ridiculous that she's like trying to like
antagonize him.
Well, antagonize or hurt his feelings by calling him names and stuff. It's like this is what or what normal people would want that were trying to get a rise out of people. I don't think that's the case with this killer because I don't think he really wants necessarily anything. He's just there to kill and torment. But Claire definitely steps in, I think, as the audience in that scene. I really liked her quip there because that's what I'm feeling. I'm like, just hang up the phone. I mean,
at this point, like
at the audience perspective, I'm like, I want this call to go on. It's so like entertaining and disturbing, and I just wanted to know where it was going to keep going. But everything, if you're in the scene, you're like, just hang that thing up.
What still gives me like goosebumps in that first phone call is that it's so angry and deranged, and then she calls him like a fucking creep or something on that line, and then he gets really calm and just says, "I'm going to kill you," and then hangs up, and his whole voice changes. This is clearly someone that is he has so many different personalities, I guess, where he's almost animalistic in how he is approaching the conversations with them and like all that stuff. But then that whole like calmness at the end of that call, it's so fucking creepy. It works really well. But I loved how that first one goes, and I agree. I think Claire is the audience because like I always wonder when there's phone calls like this in movies because most of us probably would be like, I'm not engaging in this much longer. I don't know how long I will listen to it before I hung up. I don't think I will listen to it long before hanging up the phone. Of course, as you know, as a movie, we want it to go on longer.
Yes,
but I think normal people will be like, yo, just hang up the phone. But that moment does a lot too for the movie with Claire and her because you need a reason for Claire to be like, I'm done with this downstairs. I got to go up and pack anyway. And that just pushes her to like faster to go upstairs and get away from the group. And I would say Claire's death. I always relate this to the first time I saw it because it fucking scared the hell out of me when I first saw it. Because you know he's in the closet because they've set it up just for his point of view, right? But her walking closer and closer, thinking it's the cat because they can't. Yeah, the cat is missing several times or most of the movie. First half of the movie, and they're looking for it, and it's so quiet when she's walking up to the closet. You don't hear anything until the noise that he makes, whatever the fuck it sounds like a roar more than the yell before he wraps the plastic around her face, and it's just so quick.
And it comes around to the gates too. This is like 10 minutes into the movie or something.
In the movie, and I do love learning that the actress was not told when he would hop out, so so she was very scared and realized. But it works really well, and just an example of like less is more. It's not like you don't need really to see her die. It like we talk a lot on here about like gore and violence, and sometimes you like that see a little bit more, but like this was a good example of not seeing too much.
Less is more, exactly.
And it being just enough, like a perfect amount. But yeah, that first murder and how that transpires, like it sets up how hopefully when you're watching the first time, how all the other ones are going to go. It's almost like everyone's almost like a sneak attack where it's like, and he has that advantage over them because they don't know he's in there. And so every one of those feels like it's a sneak attack because they have no idea what's coming. Yeah.
And the fact that like he hauls Claire up to the attic and it just coincides with she was leaving the next morning anyway. So these girls don't even know that they should be afraid in their own house.
Right, exactly. So they're like, hey, she was supposed to leave. Maybe she left early. That's why the fight with Barb is kind of important too. They're like, maybe she was upset and she just like left early. But I do like that they have her dad come because we haven't heard from her, supposed to like basically pick her up from here, like nothing, and they're setting that up too. And I also like that along with what's going on in the house, most of the action is in the house, but there's also this mother whose little girl is missing. And you're to assume, I just assume that little girl is probably killed by him before he got to the sorority house,
right?
Like that's the assumption being made because they mentioned at one point that he makes a call after each murder, basically.
Right. Yes.
So when he gets to the house, the first thing he does is call them, because no one in the house has died yet. So you're to assume that he probably kidnapped and killed that little girl and then snuck in the house and then proceeded to make his first phone call. And the fact that this has happened before, because Jess has mentioned that, it's him again. I was to believe that he's been in and out of the house before on numerous occasions.
Perhaps.
Absolutely. And they didn't know it, which makes it creepier too. Like,
and
a lot creepier.
Maybe I'm also curious too, and it's not an important detail, but I'm curious like how he would know the number to the house. I guess we don't know anything about this guy, so we don't know if he is a student on the same campus, if he is a stranger, if he knew the house number from previous owner. Like, I guess we don't know, but
well, I had a friend that was like, he was like, I don't know if this is the answer, but he was like, back then it was so much, if you knew the address of somewhere, it was so easy to look up numbers for houses like that.
Oh yeah, true.
Like
Yellow Pages
you use Yellow Pages, so
you
can easily find someone's like address that way, and just and their phone number. So I assume that that is crazy. That and it took like a lot of like stalking cases where they'd be like, oh, we should probably stop that.
Well, I grew up with a phone book in our house, but that'll be a thing of the past. It probably already is.
Yeah, for sure. We had one in our house growing up, so yeah. But I'm assuming that's how he knew.
That's a good explanation for that, actually. Yeah, easier access back in the 70s when this is set,
right?
But too, I also I think it's a little bit of a loose connection, but there's enough there. It would fit his MO, sort of. But there's also a throwaway line earlier where they mentioned another girl on the campus was also assaulted, and when the fact that they've mentioned that he had been calling them previous to, you can think maybe those are linked too, but. I like to believe that there's a randomness to him with these girls, that he just, he did it. Obviously, the only thing we really know about him before is, and we don't even know, but we can assume that he killed that little girl and then is wandering and sees this opportunity. And because when you see the shot of him as POV and he's like walking around the house, looking at the windows, and it's almost like he's like surprised. He sees
a way to get in
with the, I don't know what do you even call that, like the little. It's on a bunch of sides of houses that lets you crawl.
Oh, that's like a trellis.
Is that what that? Yeah, okay. It's almost here's a way in. That's how I looked at it anyway. Like it was random, and now I don't even like to think that he had motive. It's just let's see what I can do next.
Yeah. Which I like how they also frame the house too. Like the way that he shoots the house to show all the openness of it and how much free space that he has to reign that they're not in. Because they're mostly regulated downstairs for most of the scenes that they are in the movie. It's rare that they go upstairs so they actually absolutely have to. But he has so much space to roam and not get caught at all. But they do a good job of showing that just by panning back and forth between him sneaking around and then just what's going on in their conversations are when Jess was on the phone with the police when Peter showed up to the house. There's a vastness to that home that it would be very easy, I guess, for someone to sneak around in it and you would have no idea that someone was in there.
Totally. Another awesome quality of that house is how it's shot, with the lighting. There's so much great shadow work done here too, that we see the killer sometimes without even seeing him. We just see him slinking through the place by his shadow, which is awesome. Cool, awesome as well.
Yeah. The thing about the phone calls, when you were listening to each one, were you piecing together what they were trying to say, or if there was anything? Because a lot of people think that he's acting something out with each phone call, and that kind of whatever backstory you're getting about Billy, you're getting them in those phone calls.
I agree with that. I unfortunately I didn't get to watch it with subtitles, which is something I think that I'm going to be very happy with on rewatch because I'm definitely going to pick this up if I find. I know I was curious actually, just to touch on an earlier point. Do you have the 4K that was released in 2022?
I do. It looks
I knew
really
you
good.
did. I thought it did.
Yeah. It cleans up a lot. This is an old movie, so it cleans.
Which I love how it's shot, on that 70s aesthetic on film. It looks awesome, but I'm sure it looks great on 4K. But in any case, I want to see it with subtitles to pick up on more of that, because unfortunately, a lot of Billy or the killer's dialogue was lost on me. But I did a bunch of diving and some video watching today just to catch up to speed before the episode, and some of the videos I watched had some subtitles on for his dialogue and explain what he's saying. So I very much do agree that he is reliving or acting out some deranged sequences from either his childhood or early in life that he is, for whatever reason, compelled to share with his victims in this movie. But I did see that a lot of people just sort of chalk up his phone calls to unintelligible muttering and ranting and stuff. But I think there is a lot of subtext of who he is as a person in those phone calls, what we get with his ranting. There's a little bit more under the surface there than it might seem. Although there's definitely moments of random gibberish and him just moaning and screaming, but there's definitely, you get like several different like characters, if you will, different tones of voice, completely different people, it seems like, speaking on the phone. And that's actually too a trick that I think that there's a couple of different people providing the voice throughout different scenes, which is great to keep us guessing who he is now. But no, I agree, there's a lot there. A lot of his story comes from the phone calls because we don't see him. Again, such a brilliant decision not to really show him. The scenes we get of him, the shots are great, but it's like the least we've ever seen of a serial killer or a killer in any movie that I can ever think
for
of.
Like a movie like this. So like the impression that I got is, and of course this person's deranged and crazy, so it can also be something he made up, but you know, he's Billy. And I assuming that Agnes is like a sibling or a relative or something, maybe a baby, like a younger sister. And I either he killed her on purpose or it was an accident, whatever. Because like that last phone call where it's going back and forth where it sounds like he's imitating what sounds like his parents, where he's just like, Billy, like, where's the baby? Where's Agnes? And like, and he's going back and forth, and then he's pretending to be a little kid himself, and he's just like, you're like, it's all right, mommy, Agnes is right here, like it's like a whole thing. So I just assumed that he killed his sister either on purpose or by mistake, and that is what he's acting out. And then every time he kills someone, he feels compelled to act that out even further.
There was a great breakdown too that I saw that it was kind of questioning why the setting, why this happening now, and the person sort of went to or tried to describe it as like Christmas being a time where a lot of us are transported back to our youth, and it reminds us of childhood too, and that could be like a motive that triggers him and to having these flashbacks and making the calls and stuff. And I kind of like that too as an explanation. But again, I love the ambiguity that we'll never really know truly how much of this is genuine background of this guy, if it's just utter gibberish. We don't know anything, which is great, but I do think that there's stuff I like to think that there's stuff we can piece together there. And I agree that your theory's spot on, I think. And obviously I think he's dealing with some backlash from the parents, particularly the mother as well. I can only imagine that a character like that was probably locked up in a room somewhere too by an abusive mother. It seems like very Norman Batesy.
Because it's interesting because like when he kills Claire and he puts her up there with the bag over her face, and he's at one point like rocking her back and forth, like almost like he's taking care of her. And it's all these little things that you have to piece together yourself. Like, why is he doing this? Which is, I'm glad that they don't go into great detail about who he is. Like, you're supposed to just, I mean, we could very well be wrong. All this stuff could be fake and he could just be crazy. And that could be it. But I'm glad that they don't give an explanation. But they're like, you know, it's up to you. Like, if you want to put more of an emphasis and like backstory on what he's doing, I just love that you learn a little bit more about who he might be through each phone call. It gets more and more progressive, and you know, and with more detail.
Very uncommon to do with your central antagonist in a movie. I feel like I can't think, at least on the top of my head, of any movies that don't sort of like. It feels like movies, particularly how they're written, like want to. Certainly these days, not all the time, but really want to throw at you, give you all these explanations, make it very hard to derive your own theories from it, which I feel is like just a rare aspect that definitely helps this movie be more memorable. Like the less is more scenario, like you mentioned earlier, just goes a lot farther than I think filmmakers give credit, or writers, maybe whoever, both. Because we don't need to know. That's like half the fun of this movie, is not really knowing and not getting a clear resolution.
Yeah, and I've shown some people that they like it, but they get upset that you don't find out who he is.
I've
Or
never understood that. I don't know why we need to
and
know.
I think that's the best thing about it is that you don't
Yeah.
find out, because again, like if you were one of the girls, this would be so random and you would have no idea why this is happening to you. Now I know they do what a lot of these movies do. They try to set up the boyfriend as who might
And
be doing it.
convincingly, they do.
They do.
Yeah.
It was interesting is that you already know that dude's in the house, so it can't possibly be the boyfriend. But
Right.
there's another scenario that maybe it could be two people. He might be in cahoots, like whatever.
Right.
Clearly the boyfriend's upset.
Yeah,
Like,
and a little bit weird himself.
Yeah, he's upset because she wants to have an abortion. It fucked up his whole thing at his recital. Like he didn't play well, and that didn't go well at all. I love when he comes to the house and he kind of frightens her, and she's trying to tell them that she was on a search party and like Claire might be missing. He has like zero remorse. He doesn't care because he's just kind of like, we need to talk about this thing that you're trying to do, and he just doesn't have he doesn't care at all. And they really do set him up as a good red herring, even though we know what's going on in the house, but he is pretty off kilter himself.
Exactly.
But I do love that it also makes Billy or the killer really smart, because there's that one phone call because Peter makes that comment about you're talking about killing our baby as if you were having a wart removed.
Yeah.
And then during one of the phone calls, like Billy ends with that, says it's just like having her wart removed. So like clearly he's smart enough to listening. Yeah. And then of course why he knows it, but then she's like, how the hell would this person know it? It has to be maybe my boyfriend messing with me, because I know that he said that to me. So there's like a lot of fun layers to like all of that.
Definitely.
Even though you have an idea of already like, I already know like it can't be Peter. Like obviously it's not, but they do a good job of the silhouette of the killer looking like it could be the silhouette of Peter. Like they look the same, like they're the same build, could possibly same hair-ish totally. From what you can see, because you only really see the killer in like shadow and there's two moments where you see a little, and they're pretty fucking creepy. When he murders Barb, which is like my favorite scene in the movie, because it's like you have these kids outside singing "Oh Come All Ye Faithful" outside, and then he's murdering her inside the house. But that's your first real glimpse of him, is like when he's standing over her with the sculpture getting ready to stab her, and you only see like his eye and then like him in shadow, and that's it. And then there's the other one towards the end where she's found her friend's bodies in the room.
This is my favorite scene.
So this shot has stayed with me forever. I think it's still fucking creepy and it's scary. And it makes my skin crawl. It just pans over to like the crack of the door, and you just see his eyeball. And it's not just the fact that you see his eyeball, is that he's whispering too. He's doing the whole like, Agnes, it's me, Billy. And like I think to this day, this is why I don't like if I'm like one of those sliding closet doors.
So do I. It's never open.
So I can't even have it cracked because of that. And I don't like when I don't like when doors are cracked because of that. And it starts from seeing that movie. Like that moment, that movie like freaks me the fuck out. And it still does. It's a really menacing fucking shot.
Yeah. And the subsequent chase is like my favorite. I think when she slams the door and like I think catches his hand, right? Like pisses him off, and he squeals or yells, and like she's running down the stairs, and you hear him just roaring behind her, and you don't see him really chase her, but you can only imagine that he is going full tilt. And that sequence of her running down the house, she tries to go out the front door, it's locked. He obviously is taking his sweet old time, because she runs to like, I'm kind of like caught up on like how the layout of the house is, but I'm assuming it's like a cellar door or something, and she goes down.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
Yeah, he's pounding on it, and not even screaming because it's not like intelligible, but just grunting, like freaking out like an animal.
It's like a roar.
That was my favorite sequence in the movie for sure. Right, starting from the eye, like I guess the display of her two friends dead. And then him talking, like whispering to her. It's like he doesn't even care that he's seen. And then the chase. Oh my god, it was so good.
And I'm guessing too at this point he's fully aware that she's the only one left too, so he can like toy with her. Show it. So that scene, whenever I show it to someone new, watching their reaction to it, even though
Mhm.
I know it freaks me out, it's also gives me immense joy to like watch other people freak out to it.
Definitely.
My friend Shannon had the best reaction to it when we watched it. She was like drinking a glass of wine and it got to that and she was like mid sip and it like scared her and she spilt it all over her couch. And she was
Oh
like,
boy.
and she's like, why didn't you tell me that was coming? I was like, oh, that's the fun. I'm not supposed to tell you that's coming.
Yeah.
She was like, oh, she's like, I can't unsee that. And it's funny is that it's so simple, but like it's a menacing fucking eyeball. Like it looks creepy. Like
reminds me of like the Hills Have Eyes, like a scene from that. There's also like an eyeball scene, I think, in there.
And yeah, it's pretty animalistic how he chases her. He's like knocking shit over on the way down. And there's one shot you can't even. I've tried to pause it to see if you can see his face. You can't. Like he falls on the ground like by the staircase, and it's almost like he's like ripping at the ground, like trying to like get at her. And you only see like a shot of his hand, and that's really it. It's so fast. And then when she runs back by the stairs, he just grabs her hair and like pulls her down. Like it's just like, and again, that's all. Like I didn't even know you could have a chase scene and like not really have your killer be seen at all in said chasing.
More heard, which is arguably just as terrifying, if not more.
And then and like you said, he's like banging at the door and screaming and grunting. And then what makes that scene creepier is that he just stops and and you can hear his footsteps. He's not running away. He casually walks away. It's like very much like it's almost like this thing comes over him and then he lets it out and it's gone.
Exactly.
So like
and then
that's
who comes around from the back but Peter, which honestly, knowing it's not him, well, I don't even think I really have my mind made up at that point. I don't know if I had ruled Peter out like on my first watch, but it was pretty convincing him coming from the other side of the house. Like and just the fact that he knows that Jess is down in the basement and he's like peering through the glass and enough that he breaks through it and is looking for her in the basement. I'm like, this is pretty, maybe he doesn't even know that he is what he's doing. If it is him, if he is a killer, maybe he's like blacking out or
split personality.
Exactly. So I was like pretty convinced it was him, not like fully, but like thinking this is probably where this is going. It's going to be Peter.
What's funny is that he's so calm and she clearly is terrified.
Yeah.
And he's like, what's wrong? She's just like sitting there like that. What do you think? Yeah. And the only thing we didn't have to see it, but I would have loved to maybe have known how exactly she fucked him up because she clearly went ham on him.
Well, she had a fire poker, right?
She had a fire poker, and like killed him with that. But you're second guessing yourself because you're like, hey, movie, you're gonna tell me like who's doing this,
which is like Scream actually borrows from that, where you have the killer terrorize Sydney and then disappears, and then Billy comes through the window, right? Like it's like I feel like that I didn't make that connection there, but although it's not necessarily the killer in this movie that disappears and comes back, but I feel like Scream might have been influenced by that scene, but maybe that's what subconsciously I was thinking about.
But again, it just shows you that they were doing these tropes a lot earlier than, of course, in all these other movies, and then they ended up using them later. Right. I don't know if I've never heard Kevin Williamson talk about Black Christmas. I would have to look it up. He always talks about Halloween and being influenced by Halloween and Scream, and I would wonder if he's a fan. I know Quentin Tarantino is a huge fan of Black Christmas. He loves
nice.
It. And he said it's his favorite Christmas movie actually. So that's a winning endorsement for
certainly
all those that made it. But I would love to know if Kevin Williamson was also influenced by it, because I don't see how you wouldn't be. I mean, you would have to be.
I feel like Halloween is closely enough resembles this that it's sort of like vicarious inspiration.
Yeah.
But whether or not, I'm sure he'd seen it, but who knows? That would be cool to find out though for sure.
I also wasn't even upset with like some of the injected humor in it. Like I thought Miss Mac was funny, the house mother. Like that was added by Bob Clark. He was like we should have some levity, and then he wanted levity that made sense, and that did make sense. Like I love that she's like hiding her booze throughout the house in these random places.
The back of the toilet was a tough
toilet. One. Yeah, that was gross. Yeah. And she just like takes the.
She doesn't even like wipe the top off.
No.
For those, she one of her clever hiding spots for her liquor is in the toilet tank, and she just pulls up this bottle by a string, which is really genius. I don't know why she's going through such lengths to hide her alcohol. It doesn't seem like it needs to be very much of a hidden thing. Barb's drunk all the time in this movie.
Drunk all the time, right? And I think she's just trying because she's a house mother. She has to be
perhaps,
like a
she
good
doesn't
influence.
come across as necessarily a good influence or a responsible adult, but maybe that's because we're seeing her drink all the time in secret. But that was foul.
I feel like the characters are self-aware enough to know that Miss Mac probably, takes a nip every now and then.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also could tell for a long time if she liked the girls or she just like it's just something that she just had to tolerate. Because there's certain times where she's like off camera that you can tell that she thinks the girls may have found her stash and like she kind of murmurs to herself and like cursing to herself. It's hard to tell whether or not she really enjoys them or not.
Yeah, true.
But I will fall on the side. I think she does it for the most part.
Yeah. What did you think of her death, Miss Max? One of my favorite moments, actually.
It was well done. I was trying to in my mind. I remember I first saw it. I think I overthought it. I was like, was that plausible for that to like lift her up the way it lifts her up?
Yeah.
I'm thinking not, but whatever. It was cool.
Well, yeah. I guess you can assume it's on a pulley system, like this big hook that he hits her with. But like, I think it.
But he would have to make contact, like. Yeah.
I think what's more implausible is like him hitting her in the head with the hook enough that it sticks in her to yank her up. I think if if she was like, for instance, holding it, I think she would get yanked up there if it's attached like to a pulley system. But I could have dealt with again, this is not even really complaint, but like I could have, and I get to probably the limitations with the budget and what you're seeing on screen, but like to have actually seen where the hook goes in instead of insinuating that it hits her in the head from the camera angle and then yanking her up, I think would have been a little bit more like concise, but I buy it. And she's yanked up there like on a harness too. Apparently the actress that plays Mrs. Mac noted how uncomfortable it was, especially strung up there on some of the attic shots, but props to her for putting up with it because it looks pretty sweet. Seeing that angle of her half of her body just getting yanked up into the attic was super awesome. And a great little stunt, I guess.
And I love that it's in pieces too. It's kind of like she gets up there and you already seen him like holding it. So you've seen his hands like and he's like shaking, like getting ready for her. And then she sees Claire, and then there's a reaction to that. And then the slow turnaround. And I think you can kind of hear him breathing behind her too. And like it's really because it has that like stinger from the music, and then it gets quiet, and then you only really hear him, and then she sees him and he just lets go, and then he lets out a yell when he lets it go, and then like just gets her up. And it's well done. I mean, it's certainly a really well done sequence. I like that one a lot too, actually.
Is it after he kills her that he goes on that big like freak out up in the attic?
Oh, he goes in a fucking rage.
Rage mode. Yeah, that was a really unhinged moment. Like that was one of the more disturbing moments to me too, where it's like this guy is like.
And I think as a viewer, you're trying to put more into like what is causing that, like what's making him do it.
Yeah,
like you kind of want to know more, but then by the end of the movie, you're like, I'm glad they didn't tell me more. But like you also like, I'm intrigued to know more. And
is he satisfied from killing? Is he angry? Like you can't really tell based on his reaction.
My interpretation of it, and yours might be different. His
I don't know
reaction,
if I have one.
His reaction, it seems more like he's upset and not in like he seems more like sad than like like he almost like he doesn't want to do it. And then there's something that's making him do it, and then he's angry because he's done it. That's how I kind of take
anger. It, I definitely picked up on some anger there. I guess I associate it with like because he's killed again. He's maybe sort of like brought back these unpleasant memories of whatever happened that triggered him into becoming this unhinged person, and that's what he's reacting against. But whatever the reason, definitely, I agree. Like I seem to get this like. This affects him negatively. He's angry about having done it or it having happened again. But for whatever reason causes it, when he's destroying the attic and freaking out, like again, the noises that are made by whoever is behind the camera, because I don't know at what point it's because the
there's like different people. There's the directors, some of it. There's like another camera operator that did it. No one really can identify. Some people are the eyeball shot. Some people are like, oh, that was me.
How do you not know?
And other people are like,
no.
No one knows who that was, and then some people were like, I think it was me," but they're like, their memories are fuzzy because they made the movie in '74.
But like, I don't know how you not know that iconic shot was.
And I would want it, and I would, I know, I would want to be like, "Yo, that was my eye. That was my eyeball." Like, that's the money shot.
Unless there's like multiple people doing multiple shot takes of it, that makes sense, I guess. using different people for different takes. But that attic freak out is an awesome sequence, awesome scene, and really I feel like the
I
movie
remember
sort of takes a different turn
kicks
after
up.
that. Yeah, it kicks
I
up.
remember after that. Yeah, I remember when that was over. After we first saw it, my buddy was like, "This dude's fucked up." It was just like quiet, and he just shouted that out.
Yeah,
I was like, "But yeah, it's
not your average killer."
But yeah, I will. It's interesting that again, you can put your own interpretation on what it was. Like, I really thought like he seems like he doesn't want to be doing that stuff, and like I said, because also it goes back to the phone call thing, whether or not. If you were to believe that he killed Agnes and Agnes was his sister, whether or not was on purpose or if that was accident, and you know, but yeah, they don't really fill in those blanks, and I guess that's good. You have to figure them out on your own, and we could very well be wrong, but
exactly. I like when there's not a yes or no. No one has to be right or wrong. It's up to you. That's one of my favorite qualities of not just horror movies, but movies in general. When the directors or multiple people making the movie just allow the audience to think for themselves, I always appreciate that opportunity. It's nice too. A lot of great stories have it laid out for you, but that was just a quality about Black Christmas that I really, really appreciated.
Yeah, I did too. And I remember watching with two friends one time, and it's after Mrs. Mack gets killed, and then Jess leaves the search party to go home. That's when she gets the phone call after he kills her. I had one buddy that was like, "So is he just calling hoping until someone picked up?" And then my friend was like, "No, I'm assuming he was watching and saw her coming." And then started like calling because like
he's got a bird's eye view at that attic.
And that's what makes it creepy that he like patiently waited for her to come back and then made that phone call. And yeah, that one is creepy. And I love that, like, you know, you get the one with Barb, which is probably the best kill in the movie. I'm glad that you don't really see what happens with Phil either, the girl with the glasses. Like that one was creepy too, where she just walks in the room and you just hear him whisper like Agnes, and then the door shuts. And so that one was like really creepy.
Remind me again, because I was doing my reading and like read that Phil's character dies off screen. I found myself not remembering when in the movie. I know it's like towards the end. It's after Barb, but when exactly? What room is she in, and what is happening when she dies? I can't remember.
It's after Barb, and it's after those, which is actually a funny scene too. It's after those two guys come to the house with the shotgun, and they don't want to let them in, and they are part of the search. They're part of the search party,
right?
And then it's after that moment because she goes upstairs, following those scenes, and we're assuming the room that she goes into is Barb's because it has like the reef has like the beer bottles and alcohol bottles on it, so we're assuming that's Barb's room,
right? Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, she goes in there and she just says Barb, and then you just hear him whisper Agnes, and then she looks in that direction, and then he just shuts the door, and that's it. You don't really see what happens to her.
Is it Phil that's with Barb dead on the bed when Jess comes
on the bed?
Yeah, okay, there we go.
Yeah.
I couldn't get a great look at who it was. I figured that's who it was.
And he's like staged them in a way too. That's certainly not how they died.
big Halloween nod right there. I found that was like the scene when Jamie Lee, when Laurie comes in and sees all her friends displayed in the room. That's exactly where my mind went when I saw that scene at Black Christmas. So that is awesome.
What do you? Because I think the whole Christmas angle really works because like I think we talked about this before because you have this like really happy holiday being juxtaposed with all this like violence and then terror, and that's why I think this works. Did you think that added to the movie at all?
Certainly, and I don't know, beyond Gremlins, which is such a completely different movie in tone, I don't know that I've seen a movie like tackle like any sort of like negativity around Christmas as this one does. But I honestly, by the time the movie is all said and done, I looked at this as more of a movie set around Christmas, but I didn't really come away that this is, it's in the title. It takes place. I don't know if any dates are mentioned, if we know how close to Christmas we really
how close it is. No,
I didn't necessarily resonate with the day.
Christmas break.
For sure. I'm more like the holiday season than Christmas as the date, but I included in my review on Letterboxd too that this feels like the absolute best like November movie, like the great segue from Halloween to Christmas, more so than at Christmas time. But I get like this movie I think was enhanced like watching it like with my Christmas tree up, with the holiday lights in December or at least late November. It'd be nice. We don't have any snow on the ground over here yet, but it definitely feels like a holiday-ish movie because of the setting. But I associate it more as like that transitional time more so than like Christmas is the day. And I think that's good. Like I feel like honestly, like too many Christmas sequences or holiday sequences might have like forced the point. I think we get just enough. I think like the Carolers was a great, again, how it coincides with Barb's death was awesome editing.
Yeah.
And I like that's really as far as we get into it beyond like some of the imagery and the lights and the mentions of the holiday break. But the Carolers are really the biggest in your face thing that this is taking place around Christmas.
Yeah, and I love the shots of the house from outside. Every time you see it, like it's just the darkness, and then just like being illuminated with the Christmas lights. It's like shot really well.
Yeah,
it was interesting. I watched this. I actually have, you can't see it here, but I have like Christmas lights around in my room, like around the TV.
Oh, nice.
and around the closet. And it was the first time I actually watched the movie like that with like
cool.
that kind of setting around it, and that was kind of cool. It was like an added effect to it. I always get torn about when to watch it because it's a horror movie and it feels very much like October. Like you would want to watch it then.
That's when I think I might watch it next.
but I have made it like part of like not Christmas Day, but like leading up to it. Like around the time that I watched it for this is like probably a good time to have watched it.
I think so too. Yeah, right before. Yeah.
Yeah, and lately I've thrown the remake in afterwards just because whatever. I don't have to pay attention to it. It's one of those things where I could be texting or doing something else if it's on. I won't like sit down and actively watch it usually. Okay, but it's like good. It's good like ear filler, I guess. If like I have something to listen to.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead is in it, which is pretty cool.
It has a pretty decent cast, but like I don't know, Katie Cassidy's also in it, and she was she was horror movie kryptonite for a little bit because she was in When a Stranger Calls remake, she's in the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, and she's in Black Christmas. So she was on a string of really bad horror movie remakes. Like a lot of if you really look online for people that really like the remake, they love the cast, they love the girls. All the girls are bitches, so there's not, other than Katie Cassidy, everyone's character trait in the remake is they're mean, except for her.
I'm having a look at the class now,
and like some people like really enjoy that about the characters. It's shot really well. They do a good job of replicating some of like the shots from Black Christmas, but it's a gore fest for sure. It doesn't believe. It doesn't believe in the whole. It doesn't believe in the whole. There's like ripped out eyeballs and like a lot of unnecessarily gory stuff in it. But if you want to enjoy it on that level, it's fine. But if you're like, I think a good remake could be made of this though, if they actually took it seriously. That was what was frustrating about the remake when I first saw it, because at the time that was 2006. Right. And a lot of people hadn't heard about Black Christmas. So I was like, that's a good opportunity to make a good remake that is in the same vein as the 74 movie, like atmospheric and suspenseful. But Dimension Films went the total opposite direction.
The remake description on IMDb sounds even more like Halloween, which is kind of funny. The 2006 version says, on Christmas Eve, just substitute that with Halloween, an escaped maniac returns to his childhood home, same exact plot, which is now a sorority house, and begins to murder the sorority sisters one by one, which is more or less what happens in the first one with a couple extra details, but it sounds exactly like Halloween. But I've seen it's got quite the rotten reviews. I guess I didn't expect it to be that poorly received, but I mean, that happens.
It's it got. And they released it on Christmas Day when it came out. I did see it with my friends. To my utter disappointment when I saw it.
You know what? On that note, that would have been very disappointing seeing a poor remake of a movie you love. On that note of, we were just mentioning how we feel the original is very underrated in like the horror lexicon. I'm surprised that, because there was only a few short years before the remake came out in 2006, like 2003's Texas Chainsaw really revitalized and started this trend of remaking horror movies. I'm surprised that Black Christmas found its way in there as the Hollywood remake victim, because it doesn't.
I feel like they were just grabbing everything at that point. They were just like, it was House of Wax, it was The Hills Have Eyes, Last House on the Left, When a Stranger Calls. It was all of them. Prom Night,
right?
yeah, I think that whatever they could get their hands on, they were willing to do. And this one was even more interesting because like Black Christmas of all the ones I just mentioned was probably the most obscure. I mean,
that's
people
impressive.
were familiar with it when a stranger calls. I mean, I like my mom actually was horrified by, and I don't think she got past the first 15 minutes, which is why she was horrified by it. Because the first 15 minutes, it's the first 15 minutes of that movie, it's like a masterclass. It's so good that it's so disappointing that the rest of the movie turns into like a boring like cop procedural movie after that. And I was like, oh, and then the last 5 minutes are creepy, but it's a lot of middle shit that sucks. And
I watched that growing up a few times.
And when they remade it, I was optimistic about when a Stranger Calls remake because they took the 15 minutes and expanded that into an 80-minute movie, and I was like, well, that might be too much, and it was. Like you can't really. It's like it'd be a great short film, like for sure.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Sometimes movies are just meant to be that way.
And like, yeah, but yeah, you know, I was surprised. I remember when they announced this remake, I was like, but I was also encouraged by how promising it could have been because I was like, oh, now people don't know about it. It would turn a lot of people onto it if this is good,
right?
But then, like, and you know how much I hated it? I just looked up on IMDb and it still has my original score from when I rated it when it came out. I gave it a 1. That's how much I hated it.
Oh, yeah. That is hatred. That is the lowest you could go. I don't blame you, though, at all.
I just see me, like, getting on my, like, computer when I got home and just, like,
I can picture Rob Zombie's Halloween having a similar score for you.
Yeah, it probably does. I should look that up. Yeah, I was pretty pissed. Especially when I dragged my friends to go see it with me, and they were like, "This was awful."
Yeah, that's a shitty part too. It's not often that I'm watching movies in the theaters with more than one person these days, but to gather a group of buddies and go and it be a shitty experience is detrimental. I've been there too.
Well, what's funny is that they always would go. They would never be like, they would never second guess it. They were like, "All right," even though there was opportunities or times where I probably picked the wrong movie, and they're like, "That wasn't good." They would still give me the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, all right, whatever. Maybe this one will be good.
I think what's equally as insane as the premise of Black Christmas is Bob Clark's filmography, which I'm sure you must have perused through before. I have it open right now. There are some very interesting directorial credits amongst his filmography. Yeah. I guess, too, it should be noted, he did another Christmas classic on the exact opposite. With Christmas Story in 1983, which is another beloved classic. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I think that would be a good one. That turned 40 this year too.
Yeah, I saw that for the first time a year ago.
What?
That was the first time I saw it. Yeah, first time a year ago. And like, and by the way, I got every time I told people that I got that same reaction from everyone I told that to. Like,
I mean, I haven't seen it in my adult life, but I grew up like there's some moments in that movie that are just like I'll always remember, like the tongue on the pole. You'll shoot your eye out, like him with the BB gun.
You know what, dude? Too, I think that movie would have benefited me more if I had saw it as a kid.
Yeah, that's what I'd seen. I haven't seen
it because when I saw it, I was like, I laughed at a few things, but I definitely didn't love it the way that the way that all my friends love it.
I'm sure I would feel that way too if I were to see it now, because I don't have any like attachment to it. I only saw it on cable TV a few times as a really young lad. But
yeah, there's this guy Kurt that does like the top 5 film dive on Instagram, and I think he gave it like a C-. And
that seems like accurate.
And he got so many like angry comments from it.
Yeah, and he got the nostalgia goggles on. Yeah,
and he put it on his story, and I just commented back. I was like, I don't love it either. So you're not alone. I think that was like a fairly accurate score, but maybe I would feel different if I grew up with it. Like it might be like Home Alone, maybe if I grown with it in childhood.
I think Home Alone's a genuinely good movie, though.
That's true.
Chris Columbus behind it. I don't know if Bob Clark had really any other movies quite as good as Black Christmas.
He did Pork. Oh no, not as good. He did Porky's, which I guess like kind of is like they think is influential in starting the whole like teen raunch sex comedy,
like American Pie, sort of.
Pie, yeah. Okay, it made money, yeah. But yeah, his filmography is really interesting.
So yeah, the particular standouts beyond Porky's I had looked up just because in some videos they mentioned that as being one of his other worthwhile movies, but Baby Geniuses and Baby Geniuses 2 That is
Yeah.
crazy. And oddly enough, I had just come across Baby Geniuses 2 the other day, and I'm just going, I don't know what the connection was, but it's like infamous. It looks like absolutely terrible. How is there a sequel to this? But then I made the connection that the Black Christmas director did that, which is a weird sort of coincidence that we were just watching this a couple days after I had come across that IMDb page. But what are I don't know what I'm looking at here going through his filmography, but thank God he
I
gave
think
us Black Christmas in 74 because that movie is awesome.
Yeah, and he never wanted to do another horror film after that,
Well,
which
he's
is
such a
why
knack. It's so surprising.
yeah, like, he was good at, like, I mean,
Think of what we would have got.
I know, because at the time when we talked about the whole thing with, like, not seeing the killer, he was like, that was his idea, and he was like, I don't think any movie had done that up to that point, and, if anyone can let us know if we're wrong, because I can't think of
What about
anything
since either? I don't know.
yeah, that and not in the way that he did it. I mean, the
Right.
fact that you could frame a whole horror film where people are being attacked and stalked, and that lasts, 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes or so, literally chase, and then you don't see him much at all.
Right.
The fact that you could craft that and then make it believable enough to be like, oh, I still feel the intensity of that without even having to see him actively on camera chasing her.
Mhm.
That takes skill. And like, I mean, that was,
Absolutely.
and he didn't want to repeat himself, and I can see that as a filmmaker, but
Yeah.
he certainly, like you said, had a knack for doing scary movies.
I can see maybe a different trajectory being taken if this movie got the rightful credit it deserved. I really think Warner
At the
Brothers,
time,
if that's who it was, shot themselves in both feet by changing the name and trying to change what this movie was upon reception, and I think that just kind of killed all hope. And then a few short years, Halloween comes out and is like the definitive 70s slasher. Texas Chainsaw 2 coming out the same year might have stifled it. I don't know when. I know we covered that, but what time of year did that come out?
Oh, that's a good question. That was October, wasn't it? Because then you
Yeah. So
I think it was somewhere around
there.
there. Yeah.
Maybe that was just the big horror movie to see at the time, but if this, I feel like that was a time period when movies were getting darker. We're seeing more violent, depraved subject matter. I feel like this movie circumstances just weren't quite right enough, and what could have been if things had just gone a little bit differently. Like, who knows what might have become of Bob Clark's career, because there's really like lightning in a bottle with this movie. I think there was a lot.
I agree.
I'm glad there's no like real direct sequels, because this movie is great as a standalone.
Oh, it works really well by itself. Yeah,
he might have been having a career like John Carpenter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true.
There's brilliance there in what he does, I think.
Since you brought up the John Carpenter thing, I did want to bring up that quote I brought up earlier. In 2005, he did an interview with Icons of Fright, and Clark was asked if there was ever plans for a sequel to Black Christmas. He said, "No, I never intended to do a sequel." And he said, "I did a film about 3 years later, started a film with John Carpenter. It was his first film for Warner Brothers, which picked up Black Christmas. They ended up not getting fully made, but he asked him at the time if he was ever going to do a sequel, and he said no. I was through with horror. I didn't come into the business to do just horror." And he said, "Well, what would you do if you did a sequel?" And he said, it would be the next year, and the guy would actually have been caught, escaped from a mental institution, go back to the house, and they would start all over again, and I would call it Halloween."
Yeah.
And then for those, I mean, if it should sound familiar, because John Carpenter's Halloween starts with 6-year-old Michael Myers killing his sister on Halloween night in 1963. 15 years later, again on Halloween night, he escapes from a mental institution, goes back to his abandoned childhood home, and starts to kill again. Clark's sequel idea and what Carpenter did are pretty much exact. However, he doesn't think that John Carpenter stole the idea, because I guess John Carpenter was assigned to do a movie called the Babysitter Murders. That's what Halloween was. And eventually, and they said it was Jeroen LeBlanc, who was like a producer on Halloween, was like, it should be set on Halloween and we should call it Halloween. So like, that was arguably his idea. And John Carpenter was asked to write a movie called The Babysitter Murders, and like, that's what he did. It could just all be a really wacky, fun coincidence. It sounds very similar though. But
I'm under the impression that John, maybe if he was more under the studio's thumb and didn't have as much creative control on Halloween, he would have maybe sort of bowed to them and went with the Babysitter Murders title and whatever was originally written for that movie. But I think because he had some leeway and could change things and wouldn't probably have had this opportunity to do what was laid out for him by Bob Clark, he took that opportunity and just took the elements that were proposed in this Black Christmas sequel. Cause like I think it's uncanny. I think John lends his, signatures to Halloween and makes it his own, but at the base, the DNA of the proposed sequel and Halloween, the first movie, are almost identical,
like
really.
Identical. Yeah. And in the ways that they are alike, and you can tell me if I miss any, you have Black Christmas opens with a pretty much opening POV shot from the killer's perspective. Halloween starts the same way with what is a 6-year-old Michael Myers like going up to his house before he kills his sister. Mm-hmm. There's also seeing very little of the killer. You do see a lot more of Michael Myers in Halloween compared to the killer and Black Christmas, but there is the idea of keeping him mostly hidden for most of the movie. There's also the lack of motive too. That's also very similar. There's no real rhyme or reason for why this is happening. And of course they both take place on very different holidays, but they do take place around these like, kind of popular holidays. Right. So I guess those are like the main similarities. And they're both more based in atmosphere, tension, and suspense rather than violence and gore.
Right.
That's also another similarity, I guess. I think that might be it for the most part, but like that's enough. They really do have they're almost structured the same too. I don't like. Yeah, it's hard not to like.
You know what? You actually do have Michael. Don't you have Michael calling Laurie and breathing into the phone?
Oh yeah, you do. Yeah. Oh no, I guess it's when she calls. Oh yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of.
Which could be like a nod more than mention. But
so there's a lot. In there, but more. I mean, depending on like if you're like a big horror aficionado and you're like, hey, I feel like he might have ripped off. I don't think it's a rip off.
I don't like the word rip off for it. Yeah, homage is what I'm going for. There's rip offs and there's homage, but there's a fine line that I don't think John really oversteps necessarily.
Now, would I feel some kind of way if I was Bob Clark and I saw Halloween take off the way it did?
You might think, oh fuck,
maybe. But I am glad that Bob Clark lived long enough to see that Black Christmas became like a cult classic years after it came out, because he died a year or so after the remake came out, so he knew that like the movie was substantial enough to get the remake treatment, which is like a big deal.
He was working on I think a sequel to the original too at the point. Like he was working like
I believe so
stages, and then tragically died in a collision with a drunk driver.
Him and his younger son. His younger son, like a head on. And that guy in a plea deal only got 6 years in prison, apparently. And killed 2 people. Yeah, it's crazy. And I remember when he died. And of course they named Porky's and A Christmas Story as his movies when they were talking about his passing, but like a lot of us who had seen Black Christmas at that point was like, oh, they should name that too, because it's it's an integral part of his filmography. I don't think you get to the point that he got to eventually without it. And I love it's the same idea as Halloween too. Like made it on like a bare bones. I mean, the budget on Black Christmas is bigger than Halloween.
Are they not comparable? I thought they were both in the 600,000s. Is Halloween less?
Well, Halloween's 325.
Oh, okay, so half of that.
Half of that. So, like, I mean, but still not an expensive movie by any means.
Both impressive, super impressive,
and did a lot with very little. So, like, kudos to him on that. What did you think about mostly from the leads, like the acting overall, like Olivia Hussey and
incredible.
I guess Margot Kidder was funny too, actually.
Yeah, she was great. I guess is she playing against type in that movie?
No, I can't tell. I can't like her interview. She seemed like she's like that. Okay, she seems less Lois Lane in real life than at the time. She's passed away since too. But I feel like that's one brand.
Jess and Barb are the standouts. Like I don't remember the last time I saw, I guess, 2 characters in a horror movie like this, maybe from this period, that I liked as much. And I think a lot of that is credited to the writing. Like, there's really no like archetypes in this movie. They feel like very real this age people. Like they have real life problems, real life issues, and they talk and deal about it in real life ways. Like Barb with her drinking habits and the stuff that she says. She's a little bit unhinged herself. Jess obviously has very, very real life issues that were, I mean, at the time too, to have portrayed them so intimately in a movie felt very grounded, which I think separates this movie and the characters from a lot of other horror movies of the time, and even since. And obviously the women too playing those characters do a fantastic job. But I think it all starts with the writing, which was a great decision.
Yeah, I think Bob Clark made a point. He said that he hadn't seen young adults written the way that he thought they should act. Like, you know, they care about more than what's surface level. And he said at the time, I guess I forgot the exact quote, but he was like, you know, it's not about like just kind of like beach bunny bikini clad, like no worries, like kind of like the way they were kind of portrayed in like old school like Elvis movies back in the day. He's like, that's not who they are anymore. They're like, they have like real life issues going on. So he wanted them to be as realistic as possible, which is why he was glad that they went that direction with Jess, because she's a complicated final girl, I guess. You know, she's got a lot more going on than most. And and I do love, you don't really get a sense of her scream queen skills until like the last like closing moments of the movie.
She's got a set of pipes.
She's got some pipes. Like when she's screaming for them to answer her,
that was
you feel that desperation. And then I was like thinking to myself, like, if it was my friends, like would I go up there and look, or I just
well, they're not answering. She's yelling about as loud as she can. If they were up there with two working ears, they would be at least responding or opening the door. Like, I think she's kind of doesn't want to believe that they've already fallen victim. But yeah, that scene, that was great too. Like how she just progressively gets louder and more desperate with every time she calls her names was great. What do you actually think?
And I also feel like she knows too with each one, like that last one, and they don't answer her, that she knows exactly what is happened.
What do you think of her finale, of her, like, where do you think that I know it's kind of ambiguous, but do you have your mind made up one way or another about if she truly makes it out? Because we don't really, when we see her last, she's asleep in bed, she's alive, it seems like everything's over, but the closing credits of that movie sort of lend us to believe it might not exactly be. I mean, it's definitely not over, but does she actually make it out, do you think? Like, what do you think?
So if we're going by the whole like phone call thing after every murder, it would appear that he killed her, because the phone starts to ring like over the credits after the camera kind of pans out of her room and then goes back up in the attic, and you see like Claire's still up there, Mrs. Mack is still up there.
That shot of the house, leaving the house with Claire just in the window, like that was such a great ending shot.
That last like Agnes is me Billy is so creepy too, and it's so quiet, and then like it just pans away, and then you hear the phone ring, and that's all you hear. Like I don't want. I mean, it sucks, but I think I think he killed her.
Okay, nice.
What do you think?
I like just not knowing, and I guess I've only had the one day since watching, less than 24 hours to really dwell on it. But I guess I don't understand I don't understand why he would call if he had killed her. Like, who's he trying to reach? If we think that he knows how many people are in the house as he's picking them off, who's he trying to reach? And I also kind of thought, like, maybe there's police presence on the property. I don't know if we know how many are actually in the house doing stuff, but we do see the one on the porch on the exit shot, like while the phone's ringing. But I kind of interpret it as like, if he's calling, clearly he's not interested enough to disguise who he is, so that's going to tip off whoever answers that he's still in the house, and then
he's still in the house
to find out where. So but if he kills her, who does he think is going to answer the phone? I sort of don't know if I have my mind made up, only because I don't know what his motivations are after killing her, what he's trying to accomplish by calling it. Certainly ends for a freaky ending and very ominous, and it lets us to believe
it's
that
so quiet and still too at that point. Like it's just like, that's what makes it so like unsettling. Like it ends on that note that's like, oh, like one, you know that he's still out there and he's still alive. They haven't found him. It's also creepy that they're still up there too. I mean, and I know there are some people that question a lot about the ending. One, why did they leave her alone in the room? Like, why did the cops leave her alone? And why wouldn't they search any other parts of the house? I guess they would search. I guess I can't explain that one away, but the leaving her alone part, I assume that they believed the threat was the boyfriend and she neutralized the boyfriend. So
Right.
she was safe alone at that point. Like there was
Right.
no threat. And like that's how I interpreted it. I mean, it is kind of silly they would leave her by herself, but that's how I viewed that, is that like they thought that the boyfriend did it and then she killed the boyfriend. So,
that is an explanation too, but you think like they don't even know that yet. Like there's been no investigation at this point. I get like it's a movie, but she's also just killed a person and they don't even really definitively know that he's the threat. So you'd think that there'd be someone watching her or not be left alone just in case, it's not all that it seems to be, but I guess it could just be chalked up as oversight and they think, oh, it's the chaos is over and we'll deal with that later. But I agree too. They think the threat is over, but yeah, I like at least that we don't really need to end on this note of seeing her either triumphantly walking out of the house and it being, closing on that, or on the other side of that, seeing her die. I think just leaving with that shot of her sleeping in bed and then the shot from the attic and the phone ringing again is all we need to really know to think, okay.
It's perfectly well.
Oh my God. But I remember when the credits come out on the screen, I was like, that was one of the best horror movies I think I've seen in a long time.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Like I was like wondering what you were going to think about it. I was like, it was promising when you sent the first message yesterday about the opening. And but then I was like, I want to
I'm looking it up here. I'm pulling up actually I have it open on my screen.
Because it was pretty funny. Because you like weren't expecting it to like kind of start the way that it did.
Yeah, so that opening of Black Christmas, man, Jesus, I wasn't expecting that. This is awesome. That's right. Yeah. That was I said that after the phone call had ended, but it was like I'm referencing the phone call there with like the words he's saying and my God, like the let me lick it and the voices that he's doing.
Man. I was like, the first time I saw that movie, I was like, what? I was like, how are they doing this in 74? Like, I don't even think you hear a lot of that in movies now.
No, like, certainly not like the C word and the stuff he's describing.
I was like, that's vulgar. Like, Jesus. Yeah. It does a good job of setting up who he is or, like, or where he's going. Like, it's deeply unsettling and it works. And, I'm really glad you liked it, though, because it was, I know you've been wanting to watch it. And then sometimes I can overhype a movie. So I was like, all right, I hope I didn't overhype it.
Everyone's guilty of that, too. But this one, I think, was really warranted. And, like, again, I get like, people in the community, like cinephiles, horror aficionados give credit to this movie. And now I see why, but I feel like its popularity is it's like criminally underrated. I feel in the, for most audiences, but Cam too, I'm surprised to see we had actually lined up to see together this holiday season and I inevitably beat him to it. But I was surprised he hadn't seen it either. I'm really certain that he'll enjoy this movie too once we get around to see it, because I'd like to join him on the rewatch. I already want to see it again, but I've been struggling to think about where I'll put it on like my annual or biannual rewatch, and like I think I'm gonna keep it in November, early December time. Yeah,
it's a nice little like middle ground for you to watch the movie. Like in between holidays. Yeah,
I feel like Gremlins is more of a Christmas movie than this.
Yeah, true. And like I actually, every time I watch it, I hold it in the similar regard to Halloween. That's just far as like its effectiveness and like just all the things that he was able to do with like so little, and then just like all the tricks with the camera and like all the things you don't see, like that he was able to make creepy. And I don't know. It's a shame that we didn't get another horror movie out of him. But
it really is.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he like vicariously sent that through to John Carpenter for Halloween.
Maybe John was a little bit of like a protege or something.
But I think like the characters are pretty good for a movie like this, because sometimes, like you said, in movies this are older like this, like it's hard to identify with like some of the characters. It's a different time. They're all just different people, different sensibilities, but the way that they're written, they're very like identifiable for even today. And like we mentioned earlier, a lot of it's ahead of its time. Like I was, even in high school, I was blown away that like a character in the 70s was talking openly about having an abortion, and then also being like, I don't care what you say, like I'm gonna do it. You don't have a say in this at all, like whatsoever.
Very ahead of its time.
Also, I didn't really feel for Peter. I mean, I think Peter was just so weird that I was like, yeah, I wouldn't want to have your baby either.
When she rejects his like marriage assertion, it's hard to call it a proposal.
Oh
He's
yeah,
like,
and that's another thing.
Yeah.
Another thing that she does, yeah, that's strong. When he's like,
I don't want to marry you.
I'm gonna quit this, and then we're gonna leave school and we're gonna get married. And she's like, what do you mean we? How are you making these decisions for me?
Right.
And I love the look she gives him because it's like a slow turn, like, all right. And then she's very calm. Her accent helps a lot too. She's very calm with him, and like, you know how you have your dreams, well, like I have mine as well.
That's right. I'm my own person.
It slowly puts him down. But it's all those little things that make it work, I think.
Definitely. I didn't care much for Peter at all. In fact, I don't know if I was convinced that it was him, but I kind of wanted something bad to happen to him. I didn't want him to just like come out unscathed. I was like, this is somebody like we need something's going to happen to him, and I do not enjoy when he's around. So,
well, he got fire poked to death. So there you go.
Yeah, that would have been messy. Yeah,
she probably just went. I assume that she blacked out. Like, I mean, she did. Like, I don't know. Like, whatever she did to him was
ultimate fight or flight instincts kicked in.
Yeah, I see her like massively swinging.
Yeah,
for sure.
I guess when the cops are arriving on scene right around the same time that's going on, it is kind of like thrilling to hear the screams coming from the basement, and we're left to just, I guess, for a moment you're quite tense. At least for me, my first time not knowing what was happening. At this point, Peter could be the killer for all I knew, but you don't know who's screaming, or for who's screaming, but for why? Because she's being attacked, or because she's doing the attacking, and then when they actually walk into the cellar and see that they're both unconscious at the time they get down there. So it's like, what happened?
Dude, Billy probably thinks she's crazy at that point.
Bill's like, damn, I'm gonna go down there. What's going on?
Yeah, what's going on down there?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think I already know what your score might. You already mentioned it earlier. What your score is?
Yeah, I give this a 5 out of 5 on Letterboxd, and that might sometimes I can do that with a movie that I like really, really enjoyed off the first watch, and if I revisit in the future, maybe I'll look at it more critically. But I don't know. I couldn't find any reasons to take any points away from Black Christmas. Part of it being that I was so happily surprised at how much I really liked it. Easy 5 out of 5, and just 2, it was to see how many horror movies and just auteurs that this movie clearly inspired. Hard not to like give it its credit. But what do you rank Black Christmas, or how do you rate it?
I rated 5 out of 5, and I stand by what I said. I think that it can stand up proudly against Halloween, or alongside it, not against it.
Alongside
Halloween.
There's things that both movies do better, I think.
Yeah, and I would encourage people that love Halloween to watch this, because I think you really would enjoy it, like in a similar way. And it's cool. I mean, I love that it predates it, because it's like that is the one, like, once you do discover it, that's like the one like kind of ace in the hole you have. That's like, oh yeah, this came before, like, and all these things that not even that you just love about Halloween, but like any other. I think like that is the first real. I mean, people name Psycho and stuff like that too, but like I think Black Christmas probably is one of the first like
more conventional slasher
movie. And even though there's not a lot of slashing, you don't really see a lot. But it has all the kind of tropes of that subgenre, and does it better than most movies today. And like, not only Halloween owes a debt to it, When a Stranger Calls owes a debt to it, Scream does as well. And you could all say that they all owe a debt to Halloween, but this came out 4 years earlier.
Yeah.
It'd be different if it was like a year before. You could be like, oh well, I mean, too close.
Coincidentally,
4 years is a big enough gap to be like, oh, this was way ahead of Halloween. But I will say we've been comparing them. From what I know and read, Bob Clark and John Carpenter both had crazy respect for each other as filmmakers. Awesome. And I think John Carpenter really did love what he did with Black Christmas, and Bob Clark had no ill will against Halloween. Like, he was like, it was a job, he did it well, and so there was no like bad blood or anything like that. They both got along really well.
That's great.
So at least there's that, and I'm glad we got to end our Christmas. I almost said Halloween because it's a scary movie. Our Christmas Merry Bingemas on this one. And this one wasn't as planned as some of the other ones. We kept talking about it during other episodes. I was like, we got to fit it in.
Definitely.
Got to make it happen.
And I'm really glad we did. Yeah, me too. This
I'm
will
glad that
probably
you
be
have like
staple viewing.
a new favorite on there now, like on your
Certainly,
list.
like Mount Rushmore, certainly of like, I'm trying to think, 70s, 80s. I really associate those two decades together with horror, but like hard not to throw that up there right with the best. This was awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, glad, unconventional, but glad we got this Christmas viewing on there, and couldn't recommend it enough, especially more so to horror fans than Christmas fans. It's more of a horror movie than a Christmas movie, but a horror movie taking place on the Christmas break is
but
awesome.
Like, also, I mean, I've seen a lot of people, like, I've seen this movie pop up on a few people's unconventional Christmas movie list. This is a good one to add. You know, it can go if you don't want to watch Home Alone or Christmas Story or Christmas Vacation or Elf, you know, you can throw this on. You can throw on Batman Returns, Die Hard, Gremlins, like that. You can have a really fun, like,
Lethal Weapon.
Lethal Weapon. Yeah, I'm gonna try it again this
year. That's what I gotta get in. Yeah.
This is a good one to add to that list, I think.
Certainly.
And it's certainly a good time. And depending on when you hear it, because like we're still scheduling these all out, but you'll hear this episode before our final one of the year. The final one of the year will probably be The Faculty, because it's going to come out on the anniversary date, which is Christmas Day. So you'll have a little Christmas Day gift for you guys on that day. And I was encouraged by what other people said, that like, since it's a long holiday break, you listen to these episodes at your leisure, so it doesn't really matter exactly when they come out. But this is our last recording of 2023 for us, and we are excited for what we're going to do next year as well.
That's an understatement.
We are going to have a meeting about like what we're going to do for the year for the podcast, and not just like oh, like what episodes are we going to do, like just kind of a more of a long-term
definitely
restructuring, if you will. Not that sounds like aggressive, but like a little more organized
for sure. Which
you guys don't hear like the disorganization, but sometimes it is on our end, and like it's not like it's been bad for any episodes. They've all gone well.
But I think we would benefit from more of a structure. Absolutely.
Yeah. More of a well-oiled machine, if you will. But we are looking forward to that, and we're looking forward to at the top of the year telling you what some of our favorites were from 2023. That'll be one of the first new episodes you hear. Jackson's 1 year is officially January 13th. If you want to celebrate it early, his first episode as a guest was published on 12/29. I found out. I was like scrolling to see when it was. But I guess we're going to count the 1 year as your first official year as a co-host. So we'll be doing that, and probably looking forward, like maybe doing our most anticipated for 2024. I looked at my most anticipated for 2023, and like it's doesn't even come close to what I ended up with so far.
Mine too. Especially my predictions and stuff. Year. Oh my God.
But thank you guys for listening through these last bunch of episodes, because we really didn't want to have a break in episodes, and it was a lot of work to get them all done, but we're very happy that we did. And I kind of like the hustle and bustle of the last few that we did.
Yeah, it's been nice cranking out a few. It'll be nice to sit back and relax and start. Obviously, we'll be thinking about what's to come, but it is nice. I think I'm going to use this time wisely to get in a lot of watches for 2023 that I haven't before the Golden Globes on January 7th. And just sit back and think about what's to come. I'm very much excited for that, and reflect on the last year that we've had. And it's been an absolute treasure. And just thank you to all you guys too that have been listening and have kept us going and joined us for our sort of a new format with our couple special edition, like with the Tales of Horror and Merry Bingemas. That was a fun little experiment to run. Can definitely expect a little bit more of that going forward in 2024. And two, for you guys too, this will be like right around a year of us doing this together all the time, and having me back week after week has been absolutely a thing I look forward to every single week. So thanks a lot. You really are the well-oiled machine that keeps this thing going. So it wouldn't be what it is without you, and very happy to have had the last year doing Back to the Blockbuster together. It's been an absolute ride.
Yeah, I will second that. It's been great. Doesn't feel like it's been a year. It feels like,
no. Shorter or longer to you?
It feels shorter. I mean, like, it was weird. I was going through as I was trying to find when your first episode was.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the ones that kind of like were leading up to, because I was scrolling and I was like looking at like, Cloverfield and stuff like that. And I was like, that
was early.
Later in the, that felt later in the run. Cause like, but then I listened to like a little bit of some of those episodes and it didn't feel like someone that was new that was talking on those. No, it felt like we've been doing it for a while at that point, and really, it was only 3 weeks, I think. That point.
That's like I don't know what if it feels like. It feels like it couldn't have only been a year. It feels like we've been doing this together longer, but then it also feels like that year that just went by so quick, which makes it feel like it hasn't even been a year yet. So it's kind of like a little bit of both, which is very strange feeling, but.
Yeah, I just remember when we were talking about like, like summer movies, and all of a sudden it was summer. Yeah, they were like, all right, and then it was like, all right, well, we should do this thing for this horror series, and all of a sudden it was September, October,
and then that's
and now we're at the end of the year. So, but yeah, we're excited because I think even though you were been on a full year, I think this next year it will be more solidified that it's
certainly
our thing together.
This is just a trial.
Yeah, and I know some people were probably like, well, it's been around for 2 years, but like, I don't know, it takes a little bit for these things to like get going. And
definitely.
And in full disclosure, everybody knows there's been a lot of ins and outs on the show, and that kind of stalls momentum a bit. And I'm glad that people that listened said that they couldn't tell that it stalled any momentum. I'm glad that we've been able to kind of keep that internal, but I also don't want to lie to people and say that it's been sunshine and roses either.
It takes a lot to keep this going, and that should be reflected.
Yeah, for sure. But we're in a good place now, and we're very happy with this show. We're very happy with the spinoff. Keep those requests coming in, because like I pretty much am lined up with episodes to do. No particular order, but like people that are just throwing their movies into the hat and want to talk them out. So keep those coming as well, because that's another show that will evolve too. And that will be evolving with everyone that gets on it. That's the cool thing about doing it that way now, is that it's not just, that doesn't just have to involve me. It's just everyone that we bring on to talk a certain film on that show will help that show grow. So
definitely
also want to throw that out there as well. So
all
right, do your final wrap up of
geez, I guess for us anyway, depending on how much this one will come out. As of recording, this is episode 139 of Black to the Blockbuster. And thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in for another week and listening to us break down Black Christmas for you. And this is officially the end of Merry Bingemas for 2023. It's been an absolute ride. The whole year has been fantastic. Thank you guys for helping the show grow over the year. And if you guys are just joining us, get ready for a lot more content coming to you guys in 2024, or maybe the following week, depending on when this episode comes out. But thanks a lot for joining us, guys, and for listening to another episode. You guys can find us wherever you guys get podcasts, whether you're an Apple user or Android. You can find us on the Playlist app on your respective app store. Find us wherever you guys are active on social media at the handle at Back to the Blockbuster, and we will see you in the new year. Thanks a lot, guys, and you guys take care of yourselves.
Also, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.
That too.
Kwanzaa, wherever you guys celebrate. Enjoy all that stuff and have a happy, fantastic fucking New Year, guys.
Amen. Well said.